Hello and welcome to another IRT feature update. This time we're going to talk about the new modules for 10.2 and Amirdrassil. First of all, sorry about the UIs. The footage is taken from multiple different players in the guild during PTR testing and was never intended for this purpose. I also want to mention that what you're about to see is the testing stage of the add-on, and since then numerous improvements have been made. Then we have the specific boss modules. First up is Council of Dreams, which has two mechanics that the add-on will help with. First of all is the Poisonous Javelins, which on Mythic does damage to everyone within 10 yards when dispelled. IRT will keep track of when you're within 10 yards of any player when you have this debuff, and the moment you're clear of other players, ducks are excluded as they have 99% damage reduction to poison damage, which includes the spears. It will show a text on all players that can dispel poison debuffs to dispel you. The text on the dispeller screen swaps in an instant between dispel and removing it if the player becomes unsafe again. Meanwhile, you will also be saying safe or unsafe in chat for clarity. There's also a mechanic that makes you become a duck, and when transitioning back to your normal form, it makes everyone within 7 yards of you become a duck as well. During this time, the add-on will also say if you're unsafe or if you're safe to swap back to your normal self. Next up is Vcross, which on Mythic has a soak mechanic that goes on 4 random players. Later in the fight, the raid becomes separated in 2 because of the lava that you can see on the right of the screen. When that happens, Vcross will instead give 2 random players per side the debuff. The add-on will prioritize tanks to always be close to the boss, followed by melee, followed by healers, and lastly ranged. It also keeps track of which side players are on by assuming all players in group 1 and 2 are on the left side, and all players in group 3 and 4 are on the right side. It keeps making sure that the soakers are evenly distributed, meaning that there are 4 players to soak each debuffed player. The debuffed players are first yelling their position, which is back or front, as well as a marker, and then once it's time to soak, they start counting down from 4 seconds. Everyone that is soaking are yelling the marker they are soaking, and they start yelling just about a second before the debuff becomes a soak to give them an extra second to react. The priority also takes into account which group they are in and their names to try and give all players the same position as often as possible while still ensuring that all players are evenly distributed in the soaks. Then we have Mythic Lar, which has a few orbs that he spawns that needs to be soaked. When soaked, you take increased damage from soaking further orbs by 250%, and this effect stacks and remains for the rest of the fight. Immunities are one way of soaking, but in case you need to soak without immunities, the add-on informs everyone how many stacks you have of this debuff in Sage chat to help everyone take informed decisions whether they should help out to soak or not. Next is Tindal Sage Rift, which puts a dispellable debuff on 3 random players that does increasing damage over time, but drops a large pool of fire on the floor under the player and deals damage to the entire raid as well as increases the damage you take from the dispel by 2000% for 2 seconds. At certain times in the fight, it also overlaps with the root mechanic, which roots everyone in place. When this overlaps happens, IRT will assign paladins and monks to Freedom and Tiger's Lust, the players affected by the root, as you can see in the info box on the left side. The players freeing others will always be prioritized to freedom themselves. Lastly is Mythic Firak. The add-on covers 3 of his mechanics. First is the Dark Flame Cleave in phase 1, which is a soak that targets 3 random players. The add-on will assign each debuff player a marker, and it will assign the rest of the raid to soak one of the 3 markers, distributing the raid evenly between the soaks while prioritizing melee to soak melee, ranged to soak ranged, etc. This debuff has been made a private aura, and to work around that you need to create a macro that says /IRT space Firak Cleave, which will inform the add-on that you're targeted by the cleave, and once 3 players press the macro, it will assign the rest of the raid. The second mechanic which it covers is the Flame and Shadow orbs in Intermission 1, which has to be soaked before they reach the boss, and once you soak an orb you take 25% increased damage from soaking more of the same colored orb. You also take 500% increased damage from soaking the opposite colored orb. The add-on will make you yell the color of the orb you soaked to help everyone around you take informed decisions. Disclaimer, this is a private aura, but I might have found a way around it, but since the boss is not up for testing on PTR, there's no way to actually tell. The third mechanic which it covers is the Shadow Cage and Molten Eruption in phase 2. The cage stuns players, while the eruption frees them. So when this mechanic happens, you will get 2 buttons on your screen, one for each of the 2 debuffs. Press the debuff that you have, and once you have, the add-on will start yelling either crossmark if you have the eruption, or diamond if you have the cage, to help eruption players find the cage players and vice versa. This is also a private aura, hence the 2 buttons. Thank you for watching. I hope these modules will be helpful in the progress of Amirdrassil.